I took a bit of a rebuke off Deanna doing these talks and going Facebook Live with my lectures. Deanna's, I think it might just be Dee, I don't know, it might be you guys as well. She said, either talk to the camera and to the people at home or talk to your immediate audience. So I'm going to talk through the camera and I'm going to talk to the immediate audience, because I'm actually talking to the children of the people I want to reach this morning. Okay, and now this morning's lecture, I'm going to aim for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I've got a lot of information to put in this morning's lecture, and what you can do is go find it on the Begin Again Foundation website. Sit with your parents when you get home, look this lecture up on the website, go through them, because this is a part of our the Begin Again Home Help Addiction Intervention Program. Okay, it's a home help addiction intervention program. I'm an interventionist. I'm an addiction interventionist. I can't stop you from using. I've not got the power. I've not got the desire for the power to stop you using. If I had the power to stop you using, how great would I be? I don't have the power to stop you using. I don't even have the power to help you control your using. So I'm not trying to stop you from using. I just want to step into your addiction and maybe give you another spin on it. I'm trying to create within you grounds for divorce between you, the substance, and the culture that belongs to the substance, because the addiction is a relationship with the substance, and it's a under marital conditions of the drug culture. You don't just suddenly get up and walk away from the drug culture. You're stuck with them. Sickness and in health, prison and in freedom, overdose and in waking up on cardiac machines. You can wake up on a cardiac machine and within hours you're back in with the culture. So my role as an addiction interventionist is to create life-changing, heartfelt grounds for divorce between you and the substance and your relationship with the drug culture. And I feel like I've maybe found a happy middle ground with my friends. I broke away from the drug culture in 1993, completely detached from them. I had nothing further to do with them. I had nothing further in common with them. I didn't want anything in common with them. I needed to detach from everything, from every one of them. Friends that I grew up with, friends that I fought with, friends that I'd stolen from, friends who had stolen from me. The culture, I was married to the culture. And I had to physically separate myself from it and begin again. Okay, I was 6 months clean when I broke away from the culture and began again. Okay, so how it's worked out now, 20 odd years later, I've got, I would say 85% of old relationships are now still on track, back on track, and better than ever. Okay. I've got a lot of respect from members who are still in the culture. I've got a lot of respect from the older guys who have survived and they're still living in that area. Got this fantastic relationship with them. There are still some people who really cannot forgive or forget what Colin did. There are people. This is not. You don't become an angel. You don't fly home. Okay. That's not a halo. Okay. Some people are really, really hurt back home. Some people, in my opinion, for the people who are unforgiving, as they're not trying to remind me of the past. They're living in the past. Okay, and what I want to do is even hopefully maybe even speak into their homes. Okay, so this is a lecture on statistics and signs of addictions. Once again, primarily going out to your mums and dads, your uncles, aunties, and for people at home who have never yet experienced anything like a clinical therapeutic atmosphere. Statistics and signs. Statistics for social drinking and social using. 60% of society use mind and mood altering substances on a regular basis. 60%, people within the 60% of society actually use illegal, I don't like to call them illegal substances, they use substances, and you have to be involved. Somebody somewhere along the line is below radar, because I've seen normal people, let me call them earthlings, actually experimenting with things like cocaine and cannabis. Okay, one or two maybe experimented with ecstasy when ecstasy first hit the headlines. I can remember when crack cocaine first hit the headlines, and it was just, whilst there's nothing new under the sun, every 5 or 6 years a new drug hits the market. These new drugs are hitting the market far more frequently these days, and they're pumped up within society, and it does draw people in. But not everybody ends up in a treatment centre, not everybody ends up in prison, not everybody ends up going home beating their wife up or having an extramarital relationships. It doesn't turn absolutely chaotic for everybody. And 60% of society are what we call socially acceptable chemical users. Socially acceptable chemical users. And it could be said that we could all remember days when we saw ourselves as a socially acceptable chemical user. And the instinct within people in the rehab environment, the treatment environment is, right, I want to go back to that part. I want to go back to how I was when I first started drinking. Okay? When substances are a problem, it's a one-way street. There's no U-turning, there's no turning back. You only go too far once. Okay, then you've got 3 options: jails, institutions, and death. You only go too far with substances once. All right? When it comes to using substances, you've got to look at your life, you've got to look at the people around you and ask you, are you a socially acceptable chemical user? And if you are, fantastic. Fantastic. I'm really happy for you. Have a nice glass of wine on the flight home, see how that goes down. But you've got to be honest about what happens to you after that first drink, after that first. Okay? 30% of society become socially volatile chemical abusers. Okay? Ab is not normal. You've got normal and abnormal. Okay? You've got using and you've got abusing. Okay? 60% normal chemical users. 30% of society become socially volatile chemical abusers. Okay? They drink too much too often, and every time they drink there's chaos. Okay? Every time they drink there's chaos. And now we who have landed in a treatment environment can remember that period not so very long ago. And some of us think, well, that's where I still am. And it might be that that's where you are. You just may be an out of control substance abuser. It could be. It's not for me to say you're an addict. You're not an addict. You don't suffer from an addiction until you call it an addiction. It's not, I can't say that you're suffering from an addiction. What I can say is, if we look at your life together and we just put 2 and 2 together, we're probably going to come up with 4. All right, whatever culture you're from, 2 and 2 is 4. Okay, and if it's I've said it before, I'll say it again. You can put as much lipstick as you want on a pig; it's still a pig. Okay, so the danger is we cross the line from social using to abusing, and at the abusing stage we start losing friends. They go off, get married, have kids. They finish university, and away they go off into the distance, and we kind of step onto a treadmill. Lots of ambition, lots of pace, lots of energy, but we don't actually go anywhere, and we always end up just living for the weekend. Okay, and we don't work to live. We don't live to work. Everything takes over, and it's all about that blitz at the weekend. 10% of society becomes antisocial, chemically dependent. Okay, it's the sacred 10%ers who end up in repeated treatment programs. All right, some of you are not old enough to be in the 10% bracket. In fact, I'm not sure if any of you are old enough, present company excluded, young fella. Okay, that's nothing to laugh at. Okay, it's highly unlikely that the rest of you, very possibly too young to be a chronic 10%er. okay? The problem is, it's this sacred 10%, it's the heartbeat of the culture, the drug culture. The sacred 10% cause 90% of the problems in society. So every time there's a news flash, or every time your mom suspected you smoking weed, she looks at you smoking weed and then she extracts all the danger from the news articles and she thinks you're a 10%er. She doesn't know that you're possibly still a substance abuser. So there's this social, cultural panic taking place and nobody knows what to do. In my opinion, chemical abusers need urgent intervention and, I think, accurate treatment and accurate counselling. And I honestly believe that urgent intervention for the abuser and good therapy can turn a man round. You see, if it's just a substance abuse, to go on from here, to deal with issues in the past, and then go on from here without drinking, is not that much of a problem. The idea of not using is not a problem. The idea of not drinking, it's not that much of a problem, because they're not yet 10% chemically dependent, addict, alcoholic. And here's the test for you. If you're not an alcoholic, that's wonderful news, just don't drink. If you're not an alcoholic, to not drink is not a problem. If you're not an alcoholic, there's absolutely no reason for you to make up an excuse to drink. The alcoholic will always, it might only be a baby alcoholic, but a baby alcoholic is going to grow into a mommy or a daddy alcoholic. And you can see the budding, you can see those who are graduating from chemical abusing to chemical dependency. They start stopping and then start again. They stop. I'm not going to drink anymore. Because they know deep down this is now abnormal. Okay, so 60%ers socially acceptable. 30%ers socially volatile, chemical abusers. 10%ers antisocially chemically dependent. Okay, here's the good news, man. Not every user and or abuser has to become a 10%er. You don't have to become a 10%er. Personally, a lot of people in Manchester, they would look at my life and say 10%er, Colin, 10%er, absolute insanity, radical raging insanity for years. Now with hindsight and experience and understanding, I'm kind of swaying towards, I was more of an abuser. More than once, I have taken heroin from I've gone to the dealer's house and I've gone through the ritual of making my injection, and I get the heroin, and there might be 2 or 3 of us sitting in Murph's flat or wherever, or sitting up in a flat up Brinny, and we've got this syringe together, and more than once I've squirted a little bit of it away. I've squirted half of it out because I didn't want that much. I didn't want it to give me euphoria. I wanted it to take away the sweats and the cold turkey. And many times I've actually literally taken the syringe out, I've injected half of it, waited to see what the intensity of the substance was, and many times thought to myself, no, there's enough there, taking it out and squirted the rest down the toilet. Chemically dependent, the 10%ers don't do that. But my life spoke of a 10%er, a radical, crazy 10%er. So just be careful what labels people try to put on you, and just be careful what labels you try to claim for yourself so that you can stay in control of your family relationships. Does that make any sense? Does anybody just pinch the guy next to you to make sure he's not falling asleep? Okay. I'm going to fly through these quickly. The early phases of addiction is called the prodromal period. The prodromal period is where you're bitten by the mosquito in August, but you don't fall sick until the following September. Not the next September. You get bitten by the malaria carrying mosquito, and it's weeks, sometimes a month later before you fall sick. You've been bitten by it, you've got the malaria, you're just not suffering from it yet. In between the bite and the suffering, it's called the prodromal period. These guys are usually socially motivated. They grow up in that environment because they drink, I drink, because they smoke, I smoke. Okay? And most youngsters do that. They're trying to establish their own individuality, their own identity, and they feel like they have to do that in order to fit in, and then it can spiral downhill from there. A lot of these early phases, they get a psychological relief. They feel a sense of psychological relief when they use. Okay? They don't use to just, because it's nice. Okay? It is. But they don't use for that. They use, I think I will. There's nothing positive. There's nothing beneficial about it. These guys they start saying to themselves, I'm only going to drink at weekends. And I'm only going to use cocaine at parties. I was at a party, so I had a line of cocaine. And then we go around with our diary, taking everybody's birth dates so that we can get at least 3 parties a month. And we start controlling our social environments because we know there's using there. In my opinion, that's an addiction. But I can't stick that label on you. You've got to look at this yourself and have a look. In the early phases, in between using, the substance is thought about 20-25 times a week. In the mid phases, the substances between using is thought 20-25 times a day. In the later phases, not using is simply not an option. That's good maths, eh? That's a good self-assessment. You look at yourself. And anything, the gymnasium, the girlfriend, the CrossFit, whatever it is, when you're not doing it, are you preoccupied with it all the time? When you're not with your boyfriend, are you obsessed thinking about him, dreaming about him, worrying about him? If you're not with your girlfriend, are you obsessed thinking about her, worrying about her? Or can you peacefully separate from people, places and things and really enjoy being who you are, where you are? Okay? People who can separate from people, places and things and really enjoy being who they are, where they are, very seldom turn into chemically dependent people. Okay? In the early phases, it's the early phases where we start to develop a tolerance. Okay? That's where we go for a piece of weed. We buy a piece of weed, we smoke it and we go la la land for 2 or 3 hours. And then we go back the following weekend and we buy the same size piece of weed from the same dealer off the same block. And it's like, it's not la la land anymore, it's just la la. And then it's because we're building up a tolerance, okay? That's the early phases. In the secondary phases, we start to see chemically related symptoms like blackouts, memory loss. You wake up in the morning and you've got to think, where was I? How did I get home? These are the secondary phase stages. These are the secondary phase signs and symptoms of a cancerous chemical dependency that's growing in your life, and now other people are starting to suffer from it as well. It's starting to become contagious, like a virus, okay? We start to drink or smoke just below radar. It's like sneaky drinking. And guys in South Africa, you can see it in South Africa, there's a big braai at somebody's family, and what they'll do is they'll have a beer next to the fire, and they'll have another beer in the kitchen, and they'll have a beer in the lounge, and they butterfly. They only seem to be drinking from one bottle, but they've actually got 3 bottles on the go at the same time, and we start drinking below radar. Chemically, those guys who are now maturing into chemical dependency, they don't drink, they gulp. First point of contact with alcohol is that little wiggly thing at the back of the throat. And if the police took a swab from the inside of your teeth, they wouldn't find any traces of alcohol. It hits the back of the throat, particularly that first drink. And you've heard the saying that first drink didn't touch the sides. I'll gamble that came from a thirsty alcoholic. Okay? They start gulping their drinks rather than drinking. But there's a niggling sense of guilt. They also carry a really unrelenting sense of guilt. And the only way to get rid of that unrelenting sense of guilt is drink a bit more. Until the mood change, until we are now chemically dependent on our internal feelings, external influence. Is any of this making any sense? You guys look tired this morning, eh? Oh, boot camp. Yeah. Okay? And then in the secondary phase, we see inconspicuously periodic periods, just bursts of heavy consumption. We've been drinking a lot and we've been lekker drunk and we've had a nice time, but then for no reason, right out of the blue, in the secondary phase of chemical dependency development, we just go out and get absolutely blackout drunk. Okay? Those blackout drunk periods might be every 6 weeks, and then they're every 4.5 weeks, every 3.5 weeks, every 2 weeks, once a week lifestyle. Tell me I'm wrong. Right. In the crucial phase of an addiction, we get loss of control. An alcoholic is not determined by how much they drink or how often they drink. My father-in-law takes a glass of whiskey when the sun is over the yard arm, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock of an evening, when his day is done. He'll settle down with his wife of 50 years and they'll sit in front of the TV, he'll pour himself a glass of whiskey. Not sure what my mother-in-law drinks, but the guy will sit there, he'll have a glass of whiskey. He might even have 2 glasses of whiskey, and sometimes he doesn't have 2 glasses of whiskey. You see the difference? This is how you tell the alcoholic. It's not how much they drink or how often they drink. This is what makes the difference. From that first drink, nobody can anticipate what's going to happen next. After that first drink, as soon as that top comes off, anything can happen, and normally does. Okay? We start to then see this, we develop a repertoire of explanations. We've got a library of explanations, and they all start with this. Yeah, but. Oh yeah, I realise that, but. And they usually contain promises, and 3 promises is cancer. 3 broken promises is raging chronic alcoholism, as far as I'm concerned. Particularly if we're making those promises to children and the people who lie awake at night crying about us, worried about us. 3 broken promises is the need for treatment. 3 broken promises needs intervention. A promise is a manipulation. Because as chemically dependent people, or developing chemically dependent people, we judge ourselves by our plans. We judge ourselves by our ambitions. The AA Big Book says, I judge myself by my ambitions, and the world was judging me by my actions, and I criticize them for judging me. We mustn't judge ourselves by our actions. We must turn to the people we love, and we must listen to the people who love us. How is my behaviour affecting you? The non-chemically dependent person has no problem saying to normal, able, stable, cards on the table people, does my drinking concern you? Would you correct me if you see me repeating this behaviour? Okay, but we don't do that. We've got this library, we've got this arsenal of elaborate excuses and justifications. Our behaviour then becomes really grandiose. Our behaviour as using, boozing, cruising, losing addicts and alcoholics becomes ridiculously, embarrassingly grandiose. We've just had a relapse in our midst recently, man, and this guy is taking a few sleeping pills. And the essence of the sleeping pill dependency is you take 2 or 3 sleeping pills, and when they start to take effect, you forget that you've taken 2 or 3 sleeping pills. So you take another 2 or 3 sleeping pills. Okay? And before we know it, this guy's taken 10 sleeping pills and he's drunk a bottle of vodka. And then he's got 2 trained addiction specialists sitting on his bed, and he's swearing black is blue, he's not had a drink. He's falling on the floor. He started a fire in the kitchen, there's a plate broken. Everybody around him is concerned. No, I'm all right, I'm just tired. It's a reaction to lobster, or it's a reaction to prawns. That's one heck of a reaction, eh? Excuses, grandiose behaviour, and they smell of, most drinking alcoholics very rarely smell of alcohol. It's either mints or garlic. You can tell the alcoholic when she opens her handbag, there's about 4 packets of mints in there. Here we go. Okay? And in the later stages, we start to see relentless resentments coming from the alcoholic. Relentless resentments. They've got nothing good to say about anybody. No, it's not that they've got nothing good to say about anybody. They've got a whole stockpile of bull dust to talk about anybody. And the filter and all common decency and all common sense has absolutely been eaten away by the substances. And we don't care what we say about whom, where, when, or how many times. There's your end phase alcoholic. Then we start drinking in the mornings. You start putting whiskey on your cornflakes. You start smoking weed next to Rice Krispies. The alarm goes off. You've got a weed there in the ashtray. You smoked half of it last night. The alarm goes off, and your arm on its own hits the alarm, picks up the weed, picks up the lighter, and away we go. Be a good day today. This feeling good about. I'm going to stop today. I'll just finish this one off, and then that's enough. You've not finished using, have you? You've not finished using it. No, let me rephrase that. You've not finished using it. That's not asking for a. I'm just going to take away the question mark. You've not finished using. We start to see a physical deterioration when we get to the end phase. Okay, we've just gone over 25 minutes. I'm going to bring it through to a close now. Let me just remind you what makes an addict an addict. They have a strange ability to make right sound wrong. They have a strange ability to make wrong sound right. Their lifestyle demands that they accumulate secrets. And then their secrets demand that they live a certain lifestyle. Oh, look at that for a very, very small treadmill. Their lifestyle demands that they accumulate secrets. And then their secrets demand that they live a certain lifestyle. They hide from anyone who represents the truth. They'll fight for the right to avoid taking responsibility for anything. They've mastered the blame game where they make innocent people feel guilty and guilty people feel okay. They go from relationship failure to relationship failure without change. They go from promise to promise without change. They go from intention to intention without change. Does that sound familiar for anyone? Yes. Okay, just going to close down. Guys, I've got a room full of your kids, man. Your kids. And let me just say, good kids, they just hide it well. If you know anybody who's suffering from an addiction, everybody knows somebody who's struggling with substance abuse, chemical dependency. www.beginagainfoundation.co.za. And let's get serious. Ciao, guys. See you next week. Oh, no, we won't see you next week. We're in England now. My wife and I are going to England for 2 weeks this week. Maybe we'll do something, depending on where we are next Friday. Maybe it's Facebook Live, man. You know what I'm saying? I'll have a think about it. But if not, I'll see you in 2 weeks. www.beginagainfoundation.co.za. If you need to contact us, send us an email.